So for the third SYNTHO podcast, I sat down with Matt Farrow, aka Kepler, and we spoke all things music, Leeds, inspiration, COVID, and some other interesting shit. So yeah, enjoy. How's life? Good?
Yeah, good mate. I'm just about to say my weekends have changed quite a bit. Saturday mornings used to be very different. Sat here with a brew now.
I know. But to be honest, mate, I'm not complaining. I didn't party for months, and last weekend I did a big one. Went well out of control, and I think I'm still actually tired now
Yeah,
from last week.
it takes time to catch up these days, doesn't it?
I know, but my theory is it's not just because you get older. I think you just go harder every time. Everyone says, "Oh, it takes longer to recover when you get older," but I'm like, yeah, but you go 10 times harder every time now.
This is true, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's a misconception that it's actually the age. I don't think it is. I think it's the amount of parties you do. You have to go that bit harder to make it worthwhile.
Set a new person.
I know. So we'll start off. Just do a bit of an intro about yourself, because obviously everyone probably knows you as Kepler, but you've made music under other names as well. You've done it for a long time. A bit about your teaching and how you ended up in Leeds.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I've made music since I'm about 16, really. Only seriously since I was about 18, 19, but started making drum and bass in garage actually first of all. Under loads of different aliases, not very decent stuff for a few years. And then I sort of found myself making more commercial stuff under my surname, and then moved on to the Kepler stuff about 4 years ago. Started making minimal off the back of an obsession with RPR sound system after I'd seen them a few times. And it was ace that because I was so obsessed with that sound, and Raresh in particular. And one of the first tunes I finished, I sent it over to Raresh, and he hammered it out at some ways, which was a proper shock. And that sort of pushed me to start going into that direction with the sound, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, in terms of moving to Leeds, I did 2 years down in Northampton, music production degree, which was cool. And then wanted to move to a more exciting city. So I came to third year in Leeds. And Leeds is one of those cities where once it's got you, you sort of stay there, really. There's loads of people I know that have travelled there for uni and haven't left. So, But
I remember when I first I saw your name. I think, what was that YouTube channel that used to exist?
Eating Messy.
Yeah, that was it. And I remember that was your original stuff when I first saw your name. And it's funny, isn't it? How it's like that was really like the one, wasn't it, at one time, and it's completely gone. And then I remember the Raresh track. What was it called? Was it called like 423B or something like that?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, and yeah, that was one of the first tracks I made as Kepler. I actually made it whilst I was at work as well. So one of them. But yeah. So but like I say, with the sound that I was making before I moved to Leeds. I sort of really fell out of love with that, and coming to Leeds was like a bit of musical education, I suppose. Going to clubs like Mint and Wire, and just seeing some amazing DJs, it just completely changed my taste, and that's when I started to veer away from that sound and go a bit more sort of underground, I suppose you could say.
Yeah. Do you think that making that sound before you did the Kepler stuff has taught you a lot? Because it was more, if anyone doesn't know, maybe if people listening to this might not be familiar with the Eating Mess. What was it called? Not Eating Mess, that's a dessert, isn't
it? Yeah, Eating Messy. So it's kind of like
Eating Messy, yeah.
Yeah, man.
All right, so it is a dessert, isn't it? That is named after dessert, yeah. But yeah, I think if anyone's people probably aren't familiar with that. I mean, because what was that now? Time's actually flying. That was probably what, 5, 6, maybe more?
Yeah, probably about 6, 7 years ago at least. Yeah. So,
yeah. To describe to people in, but it's kind of like garagey, wasn't it?
Yeah, but there's a lot of deep house influences, maybe sort of garage house, that sort of stuff. And it went in a real commercial direction. Some of the guys I think who were involved ended up charting with, like, I think they started a duo called Blonde, and they got signed to a major record.
Yeah. So do you think that whole phase of your production has helped you a lot now? Or do you think
definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time I was working with a management duo at the time, and they were sort of getting me remixes for. I did a remix for Becky Hill, Eliza Doolittle. I was doing stuff for Universal and Parlophone. So, and I went down to record with an artist in London that was signed to Sony, and just loads of little bits and bobs like that. So working with vocalists and just doing remixes and things like that. So definitely learned a lot from it. Yeah.
And you think that you just generally fell out of love with the whole movement, despite, I think, seeing, you must have saw some light at the end of the tunnel as well, I guess, if you're getting all these remixes and stuff, but it was a matter of just, you liked the drive to keep going with that sound.
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of getting really commercial, and that's what didn't really interest me. I wanted to make something that I would play and I would enjoy, and something that was a little bit different. And the problem with a lot of the stuff that was coming out in that area, it was sounding very sort of samey.
Yeah.
And so, like I say, moving to Leeds, I was like, this is what I want to do.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because before we did this podcast, I was thinking about things we can talk about, and the Leeds thing was something. Because obviously I did a stint in Leeds as well, and I know I've seen you mention before the influence on the city, the influence of Leeds on your music, and it really interesting to think that wherever you're born or go to university, that's going to have such a huge impact on what you actually end up listening to as a raver. You're exposed to as a DJ. Because I'm in Manchester, and I think your typical Manchester DJ or student is that much like, like the Paradise Sound, Kaluki, Warehouse Project, and in general, the same person could be donked in Leeds, and it could be completely different. Do you know what I mean? Or the same person could just be in a different city, but the whole journey in music will be completely different.
Yeah, I mean, for you, what was it? Did you spend a lot of time in Sankey's when that was open?
Yeah, I think for me, I had like a real eureka moment where I went to see Nick Fanciulli, even though it was tech house. That was when I really thought, fucking hell, this is what I want to do. Like, I saw him really, I think, because when I see DJs, the tech house ones, you get the ones that are kind of like, now I think more than ever, there's the shit cheesy ones that are like in that middle ground of crap. But then you get the guys like Nick Fanciulli, Carl Cox, the ones that have done it for a long time, they know how to DJ, do you know what I mean? Even if they might play some tunes which we wouldn't like. I think when it comes to taking an 18-year-old, a 25-year-old, whatever, on a journey for the night, they know what they're doing. And I think that was when I really like watched someone play, and I was like, oh my God, it's unreal, this. And then, it was I can't think of when it was. I think it was Apollonia, which really kind of was that bridge between, like kind of just like house music and actually having a taste for playing records. But yeah, then it was the Leeds thing. I think I went to Leeds a few times, but yeah, I think Manchester's obviously the heritage and music and stuff is incredible. But I think in more recent times, there's with Sankey shutting down, there's obviously Hidden, which is like a standout venue, but there's not that kind of like Leeds. Everyone will go to Mint Club every weekend, won't they? Well, did before it shut down, and you see the same people. That culture in Manchester doesn't exist. That you wouldn't go to. There's not a place. Do you know what I mean? Where Sankey's was that place. I did go that all the time actually, and probably that was the place that got me into it mostly. But yeah, the Manchester thing, I think now for anyone that's going to go out, they're exposed to massive tech house, which has a bad name, I guess, in our scene anyway. But I think like each to their own. I don't get too caught up in it. Where some people, they never stop crying about it. But it is what it is.
Well, that's it. And I mean, a lot of the time, these sort of big room scenes, they sort of feed into the underground a lot, and it keeps it healthy, because like you say, you started on people like Nick Fanciulli and then moved on to Apollonia and eventually went to, I guess, smaller clubs and checked out our DJs. So it all feeds into one another. And but it's interesting you say about Apollonia, because I would say for me, they were similar, just checking out their mixes and stuff. It was that cross.
It was the mixes, It was all, I remember sitting in my halls in Leeds, and I was watching just videos of them playing. I found it fascinating, really, just watching them. I'd already bought turntables at this point. I think when I bought turntables, I think naturally when you go and buy records off Juno, you tend to discover more underground stuff. I remember like the Unison Wax, the first stuff by Diego Kraus. That was like a one I bought, and I was like, Then I saw Apollonia Plumber playing that, and then I started when I look at my first records I ever bought, before I even knew it, I was actually buying. I can go back for my records from the start, like 5-6 years ago, and they're actually good records. I never bought shit, actual, physical. Obviously, I bought some horrific MP3s, but then I started putting two and two together. I was like, right, Apollonia are playing these records, like Diego Kraus. I can't think of some of the. It was like the first Politics to Dance and stuff, like Battle Groove, and then I started. Yeah, I think even System 2 from Manchester, they were making some good tunes at the time, and I noticed them, and I was kind of just subconsciously, because even in such a short period of time, social media wasn't the same then. There wasn't these viral videos of like ID 3,000 bumps. I think it was much more of you found it your own way, because now it's insane. You just open you don't have underground music isn't underground anymore. Like you just have to open Facebook, and it's like considered underground diggers with 3,000 comments asking for an ID. But yeah, it was really in Leeds, just watching videos of Apollonia, and then I think, but then it was just like RPR. They're kind of like the feeders, aren't they? And then it's like, then you can really discover underneath that this whole world.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, on the subject of Apollonia and Leeds, I think a very vague memory of seeing you on the dance floor when we went back to an afters, one of my mates, Jack.
Yeah,
It must have been one of the first. Yeah, that was proper long time ago. I remember chatting with you on the dance floor, thinking about Apollonia at the time.
I think it's funny because it's hard to explain, but say like you, for example, and then a lot of other artists I've had on, like Ivan Cutts had last one, Laidlaw, whatever, Miller, like the people, I've met you all years ago. Like this shit doesn't start like this. Like people see us now with the releases, the whatever, people playing our tunes, but our like education into what we do now dates back like years and years, and we all know each other. And I think it was interesting because I remember when I used to go to like club nights when I was younger, and I used to see all the DJs know each other, and you kind of notice that some kind of crossover. For example, I know the guys from Salado, but like people would assume that I don't know them, but you know, from like years of just knowing people before you get the people like get bigger, then you just it's like a tree, isn't it? Well, nothing ever starts with just, no one ever comes out, and well, you obviously get the exceptions that you can make one sick record and come out of nowhere, but it really is just years and years of meeting people, networking. I know the term networking, I don't really like it, to be honest, because it's kind of seems to like devalue making friends with someone. Kind of sounds like you're using someone, but it is really important, isn't it, just to meet people along the way on your journey and stay in contact with them. Because I guess when we were stood on the dance floor, and what must have been, I'm 24 now, I was in Leeds when I was 18, so 6 years ago, man. You wouldn't have thought in 6 years' time we'd be doing a podcast together and you'd be releasing all these records I would, and do you know what I mean? It's pretty mad how it all unfolds.
It is, yeah, but like you say, there's a lot of hard work gone into it over that time, and it doesn't happen overnight. And I think one thing particularly about us too is that we have changed our sound as we've moved along. Do you know what I mean? We've just stuck to one thing, because I see a lot of artists, they have one sound and they just stick to that. And for me, I get bored, and that's why I've experimented with other genres, like the garage and making a bit of electro at the moment as well, because I have to keep it fresh. I have to make stuff that excites me, and I think you're the same, because you've moved into a slightly different sound now as well, haven't you?
For me, I use the term pushing the sound forward. I think if you're just getting static and waiting for trends and like copying things, it's not going to happen. I'm not being funny, but by the time you make a track, it's going to take about a year for it to be released anyway. So I think you really need to keep moving forward and experimenting, and you just trip up on things, don't you, really? Then you find like a new little way to make a tune, and you do a few tunes like that, and then, it's not really a matter of like, it's not changing the sound. I think for me, it's just pushing it forward, isn't it? Just keeping it fresh. Because if you get too comfortable, I think a lot of people just have like formulas, don't they? I've been guilty of it in the past, which I got stuck in a rut, I would say, for at least a year. Like when my PIV release, I made the tracks years ago, but following that release, I was just using the same formula every time, the same kick, the same clap, like having a template, and I was making the same, stuck in the same thing. And then I kind of broke out the mold a bit and experimented, and then I enjoyed it much more.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, same. You do find yourself in a cycle, and sometimes when I'm in that cycle, I think it's time to get deep into discogs and gain a bit of inspiration from some older records, because that changes everything. Because if you're listening to stuff that people are making now, you're going to sound like the stuff that people are making now. But digging into older stuff from the 90s, and some of the, for me in particular, I absolutely love the sort of late 90s, early 2000s tech house stuff, like the Wiggle stuff, Eddie Richards, Terry Francis, Silver Lining, and that sort of stuff. You can gain inspiration from that, because it's different to what people are making now in terms of tech house.
Yeah, definitely. I think the more you dig, I think for me, I did like a post on Instagram about this yesterday in my story. I think the more you dig, the better you get at digging. It's like a kind of, like someone could spend 2 hours digging now and they'd find all right tunes, but say you dig for 2 hours all the time, then each time you kind of find better and better tunes, don't you? And it takes practice to find good tunes. You can't really just go on and spend a full day digging because you just don't know where to look. I'm saying like you need to keep doing it, don't you? Because even now I can get way more bang for my buck with 10 minutes on discogs, and I used to spend like 4 hours on discogs. You know what I mean? I didn't know where to look. But back to that point of, yeah, I think for me, my goal now is to make music which sounds timeless, but I want to be able to make tunes that fit along with these old tracks as well. So I think if you find these old tunes, I usually just download them, put them in my Ableton project, and then you can just keep referencing them then. And it's trying to get the same kind of sound palette. And I speak to so many people that, I don't want to reference in that. I don't feel like I'm copying. I'm like, well, if you can copy that fucking 1999 £300 discogs tune and make it sound similar, mate, you're doing the wrong thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's it. And there's no harm in using a reference. I mean, especially for stuff like arrangement, because that's something I've always struggled with in particular. But there's some really interesting arrangements, particularly in the older tunes, where you can gain a bit of inspiration from. So reference tracks are ace, man, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's a good way. I got really better, I got much better. Sorry, when I was when I just decided to put in every project, and just had something to go off. I think a lot of people just get lost, don't they, sometimes? And then I think I speak to some people, and the problem is, you see, I'll make a loop, sounds good, then 10 minutes later, it doesn't sound anything like I want it to, and they just keep finishing the track, and they're making tunes they actually don't want to play out. And I would say I'm guilty of that. I've definitely released music that I wouldn't even play myself, but I think it's really easy to do that. You can make a song sound good, but not necessarily actually what you want to make. I've done that. I'd say even not too far like distant past. I've made tunes that you just make them. They sound wicked, but you're like, oh, where did I even trip up here? But I think you have something to keep going back to, and a clear direction. Yeah,
a really good point, because in terms of making stuff that you want to play out, there's a point there that I was with the Kepler stuff that I was making before this sort of these recent batch of releases. I had a bit of a break from it because I was just going in that same cycle that we were speaking about of making, I guess, just minimal. And it wasn't stuff.
Tunes, the wicked tunes, right? People, there's someone out there that loves them, but like you kind of just start to lose that. You're like, I wouldn't even play it. Someone will go, "Oh, sick tune that, mate," and I'm like, you don't even like it, and you have to kind of just go like, "Yeah, nice one, man." But yeah. But yeah, so you started making the new stuff's definitely different. It's kind of not too. We're kind of on a similar path, I would say, with the vibe at the moment. But yeah, I could definitely see for both of us, it was a similar thing, wasn't it? Just switching up a bit and then going for a new kind of direction.
Definitely, and making stuff that we want to play that goes alongside the stuff that we're digging and playing ourselves. Yeah,
definitely. So why don't we talk a bit about your actual career on the side? So teaching, and how it slots into your routine of making tunes, and how you actually got into teaching as well.
So so like I said, I did a music production degree and finished that off at Leeds College of Music, and then the plan was to teach music production in colleges. So I did a PGCE and then sort of got into that, and I actually teach media mostly now, so TV and film, and my background's obviously the sound side of things, but teach at Leeds City College. Because I'm a course leader as well, I've got a lot of responsibility in that role, do you know what I mean? So it takes up a lot of my time. So whenever I'm making tunes, it's got to be right. I've got to be really sort of productive in my time, do you know what I mean? I've got an evening or a weekend, it's got to be sort of, I've got to get this finished, I've got a limited amount of time. So it is hard to slot things in, and then obviously I've got a young daughter as well who's 2, so it's it can be full on, but yeah, what's great is when you're teaching people, especially when you're teaching them. Sorry, that's just my dog having a. Jarvis, seen a cat, I think. So when you're teaching young people, you can actually learn a lot of them with Ableton, because they have their own ways of doing things. So whenever you're doing tuition, I guess you'll find this yourself as well, because you do quite a bit of tuition as well. So sorry about that. Sit. Good boy.
Yeah, I think I've onto the point of learning from teaching. I think I've actually learned more since ramping up the teaching in lockdown, probably since before that, because you don't really. I think the best way to learn something for me personally, if I read a book or whatever, listen to a podcast, is explain it to someone else. When you actually have to if someone asks you a question about something, or you read something, when you've actually got to go and recite, you've got to really dig then deep into your brain.
Just bear me one. Sorry about that. It's a bit of a dick today, so.
But yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I guess in a college you must get all sorts of questions flying at you, especially if it's media as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and obviously you know, students are using different bits of software as well. So it's interesting to get your head around other DAWs. Like the new Logic is actually really cool. Been using that a little bit, but again, that can sort of give you some ideas on how to do things when you're changing the tools that you're using, I guess.
Yeah.
There's different approaches. So, but yeah, it's ace, working with young people who are really like keen to make tunes and keen to learn. But I mean, with your stuff, with SYNTHO, it seems like you're absolutely smashing that, man. How's things going with that?
It's gone really good. Pretty mad, really, because obviously the thing, a point I mentioned before all this is it's going to lockdown. Obviously, when it first happened, I didn't really expect it to be like this happen, this bad. And someone like me, you knew what we spoke about. We've worked at this for what I've been doing this for 7 years now, but pretty intense. I've took some pretty big moves in my life. Dropped out of uni after a year, and was pretty like, right, I'm doing this. And not many people do that. I think like I really threw the kitchen sink at it, and I'd only really realised like 2 weeks ago that as this was starting, gigs were coming. Had gigs penciled in Australia, other things, right, amazing gigs, and also some other crazy ones. I mean, the calendar looked great, and I was like, right, after all this hard work, I'm finally about to reap the rewards. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've not really had a stable income for like ever really. I've had jobs and that, but I mean, I was just getting the money in it and just to pay to get by. Then I was doing my lessons and my gigs last year, which was more than enough for my life to live at home and stuff. I never was like short of money, but I was never like, I could never really plan, you know, like 6 months ahead because I didn't have a stable income. But obviously lockdown at the start, well, COVID, it took all the gigs away, everything. So then luckily I would hold in my teaching, which was going really well before all this. And then I started ramping up the teaching as this started, and then launched SYNTHO. But that's fortunately given me a stable income throughout this. But it made me reflect the other day that if I hadn't done SYNTHO and hadn't ramped up my teaching online, then I would have been having to get a job, which would have been like the biggest sucker punch after 7 years with 3 years of, I would say, I have put blood, sweat and tears into this shit. Like you and me's I'm saying 5 years, you and me's 5 years old in September. And there's not days gone by in the last 5 years where something's like took my mind up, like this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. Done the festival, which was like insane amounts of investment, like financially and mentally. And put everything, thrown the kitchen sink at it, as they would say. And then this is taking everything away. And I only realized the other week, I said to mum, I was like, shit, I'd have had to have got a job. Not in a way that's like, oh, why would I get a job? But I think, imagine like I guess it's the same if like a doctor went to university for all them years and then had to go and get a job 7 pints. Do you know what I mean? Obviously it's not as, it's probably more, I probably put in more hours if you count all the digging, the production, even the parties at the weekend when you network. And I know you're having a good time as well, but it's part and parcel of the trade. And then for something like this to happen, and then you take everything away, it's pretty mental. And I do feel for a lot of artists must be in the shit now. That I think what's great is, I think you've got a proper career, and I think it's really shows that the importance of, I've realized that this isn't everything. Music and being a DJ isn't everything. As much as like everyone wants this to be live, there is more to life outside of the 2 turntables and your records in the crowd. There's a whole other life to live, and if you don't have a backup or some kind of security, it's a risk. And it can't last forever, man. But that comes back to the point of, I think it's actually very good to have some kind of proper career when you're pursuing this dream, because it takes the pressure off. I put a lot of pressure on myself, and there was days where I was like, I've never ever doubted myself ever. I've always been like, I'm gonna do this. I've always looked at the mirror and been like, I'm gonna fucking do this. And it takes that because it's not, you don't just fucking trip up and then find yourself on the decks in Switzerland or thingy. It's a well thought out mission of like turning up, producing every day. Because I used to kind of think like these DJs that they're just born to do it. They were just there. They just got there. But I think actually having a career on the side takes a lot of pressure off. And I think, for example, I reckon when you find your studio time, knowing there's no pressure on it. If you make a good tune, it's good. But if you don't succeed, you still got your career, and there's less pressure on it, I think. But I guess people would say that's a bad thing in a way, because with the pressure, you kind of invest more time into it. But I think sometimes with too much pressure, your productivity levels can go down, and it can be like a diminishing return. You know, if you kind of open able and you're like, my life depends on this, you just start sweating, then you're just like, right, I'm fucking shit. You sack it off. Whereas if you've got work tomorrow, like in reality, you've got everything you need. You've got like your daughter now, Like, so it kind of makes it's more of I'm choosing to do this opposed to being forced to do it.
Yeah, and that's it, because if you're reliant on the music for money, you can make decisions sometimes that aren't usually, aren't necessarily the right ones because you're doing it for the financial reason. I mean, not so much in your case, because I think you've always had like a bit of an entrepreneurial approach to it, haven't you? With you
Yeah,
and me, it's been a party that you've wanted to grow, and you've got that business mind, and it's the same
definitely.
with. So you're not compromising your music in any way because you've got other projects going on
Exactly.
outside of that. But some DJs and producers don't have that, so they'll take on remixes on labels that they don't particularly want to be on. They'll sign music just for the sake of it when they're not really feeling it, and that can actually stunt your growth to a certain way, and putting out too many releases as well.
Yeah, I think it's crazy, really, because I think people used to be like, "Oh, I wish I had your life," and I was just teaching at home, and like had the odd gig and that. Then sometimes I'd be like, "I wish I had your life. You're getting your consistent paycheck. You know what's coming next month. You can plan ahead." Like, it's never been bad for me at all. But I mean, there's definitely pros to having that stable income. Then just chip away it on the side. Yeah, and don't make them rash decisions. Don't force that. Yeah, that release on that label that you don't want to do on. And it does feel, saying no feels good. When
Yeah,
people say, "Can you do this remix?" in a polite way, it feels good to be able to say, "No, I don't want to do that," because you've thought with your head,
yeah,
not with you've not just been like, right, 200 quid there, 150 quid. Obviously, that's nice, but I think when you look at your long term like profiles and artists, it feels good to actually be like, right, I actually said no because I'm committed to making this work like in the right direction. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, definitely. I mean, it has its downfalls. Obviously, working full time. If say I've got like a remix to do, or I'm close to finishing mixing down an EP or something. Sometimes or I've got a mix as well. All these things happen in 1 week. You lose that free time. But if you enjoy doing it, it's not.
Yeah, I think the time is the big issue. I mean, I know I couldn't do what I do now with a full time job, but like what I'm doing is a full time job in itself with the SYNTHO and the teaching. But yeah, I think that's the drawback, isn't it? If you're working full time, it's just the actual time itself. But I think people underestimate the power of just 2 hours of critical work,
Yeah,
of just 2 hours of getting your head down, turning your phone off, taking it outside the room, and just blast it for 2 hours. I think you're like me. If I spent 2 hours of solid, I'd have a track done.
yeah, definitely. It just
100%.
after that, sometimes. I mean, some of the best tunes I've made, in my opinion, have been ones that I've knocked up in a couple of hours, and I've got the main basis of that loop down in an hour. Do you know what I mean? And it's just a case of them polishing it afterwards. And less is more. Sometimes you can just do too much. It's
Yeah,
knowing when to lay in it, I guess, that's the hard thing.
it's so hard with time. I think the more I can't with the quote. It's like the more time you allow for something, the more time you'll take for it. So say you said today, right, I need to tidy my house, but I've got all day to do it. You probably get nothing done. But if you said, right, I'm going to the pub in an hour, I need to get the house cleaned, you'll get it done in an hour. Same
Yeah,
with track. If you're like, right, I need to get this track finished. But if you just give yourself an hour because you've got to go out that night or whatever, you'll get that track done in the hour. But how many times have I sat on my lap computer with that? My job for the day is just to mix a track down. And I'll just go around in circles all day because I give myself way too much time to do something. And then the result at the end is probably not as good as if I just give myself an hour to do it. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. It was Bernsky actually who told me about a little technique that he uses with his studio time, because he's like super
Yeah,
productive.
he's insane. He's quicker than me. He's like 4 or 5 tunes a day, isn't he?
Yeah, it's insane. When he came round and we sort of worked on some stuff together, he showed me like just projects and projects of tracks that are pretty much ready to go. And what he does is he sets like a timer on his phone for an hour, and he starts a new track. After the hour, no matter what, leaves it, moves on to doing another loop, and he'll just do that. So he's got
Fucking
like
hell.
loads of different tracks to then develop. So he might have 5 or 6 ideas made in a day, and maybe only 2 of them will be tracks, but that's his process. And
That's a really great tip. I think one thing for listeners, I think if you're quite new to producing, don't feel like that's suitable for you. I think that's something that's good once you really get to a level where, yeah, you'd almost got too much time and you're like, right, what should I do? And then I think things like that, setting yourself limits and working to a deadline is good. But yeah, Bernsky's a machine. I think for me personally, I've done videos on SYNTHO and I've made a track in around like an hour or so. While the basis is there, I think when you know what you're doing, I think your brain, for me personally, I just like to go kind of like just go from thing to thing. Like I'll get the synth down, then the pads down. I kind of know what's going to come next every time now. I never really sit there kind of stressed, like, scratching my chin, like what's going to come next. I find it much easier just to keep moving forward.
Well, it's flow, isn't it? Like if
Yeah.
I was to sort of start thinking about what I was doing, the track's, it's done. Do you know what I mean? It's got to be a natural, everything's just got to come out. And I was reading that Ableton book that Dennis DeSantis wrote, which is Ace. If anyone's not read it, I'd definitely recommend it. And he was saying stuff like, just don't think about what's happening and do too much. Just throw everything in it. And then the next process will be taking the things out that you don't need. So that's a really good tip as well, I'd say.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people now, I think with the younger generation anyway, we all tend to, well, the quicker anyway, we all tend to just kind of get things done. I've not really met anyone in recent times which is a prolific producer, which is slow. I think everyone seems to kind of be. But if you're listening to this and you're a slow producer, don't feel like you're doing it the wrong way. Everyone's way is different, but I think with more DAW-based stuff, it's just much easier to bang stuff down. Opposed to, obviously, if you had to record all your sounds in and then chop them, that's one thing actually we'll talk about. Hardware, but yeah, when you're recording things in, that does tend to slow me down. That's the one thing which does when I'm using hardware. But my technique now is I'll often say I'm sending some MIDI to I'll write maybe a lead inside the box, then I'll keep the MIDI for later, then maybe send the MIDI after I've made the track to my synths, and then just have a little preset flick and mess around then. So it keeps the process of making the tune quick, but then at the end, say I want to try and improve the sound, I'll send it to a synth then.
That's a good idea. So it almost comes like the sound selection becomes part of the mixing process.
Yeah.
So that final stage.
Yeah, I think I did it a lot with the ABL3 and then send it to my Behringer. Well, not do it a lot. I say a lot. I only done it like twice, but it worked really well because it was it's better. It's analog. It's going to sound better than the ABL3 emulation. It sounded considerably better as well, actually. But yeah, it's just if I write a bass line in Trillion. Trillion sounds wicked though, but then I'll send it to the Oberheim at the end if I can get something better. So mine doesn't work, but I think it's no effort, is it, just to send somebody down to spend 10 minutes just preset flicking, then you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, exactly, man. Yeah. I mean, for me, I often sample my machines and just have a session of just sitting down. I'll work in a certain key and just bang loads of stuff out. And then almost you're creating your own sample packs, and then you can, sort of edit them or anything like that. And it's, that sometimes works if you dedicate a session to that recording.
Yeah, that's something I say I'm always going to do, but I never get around to doing it. It's kind of a fiddly job, isn't it? One of them. But it's quite nice to break up the process, I guess, and do something a bit different.
Yeah, man.
So what's your routine usually like then with producing? Do you have a strict routine, or do you just do it bits here and there?
It is, I mean, because of work and sort of family commitments, it is usually just sort of when I get a spare few, do you know what I mean, nowadays. But if it sort of comes in waves, I'll have a bit of inspiration and then I'll dedicate a load of time to it, and I'll say, right, this weekend I'm going to spend X amount of time in the studio. I want to get this EP finished, or I've got a pack of demos and I just want to mix these down and start thinking about where they're going to go, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it has to be flexible for me. I guess in a sense, it's different for you because you can have that sort of schedule, if you like, or that routine. It's trickier for me.
I think it's really impressive actually that you've managed to you've really excelled, I would say, since you had a kid. Because I remember Ash, we played in Ibiza, didn't we, together? Was it last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's a funny one, that one. We played that gig, and I remember I said to you, I was like, what's it like since you had a kid? And you're like, it's mint. But like, I was waiting for fuck, I'm knackered all the time. This, you're like, no, it's mint. And I was like, yeah, and you're like, yeah, it's wicked. I'm still making tunes, doing all this. And then I would say since then, like, your productivity levels, your output's just as much as mine. And the next few months, you've got loads coming out.
It's weird because having a kid, it changes your perspective. And I mean, it's similar for people like Jack Wickham as well. Obviously, he's got a young daughter, and he's still smashed his career, and he's making tunes again now, which is ace to see. But it does change your perspective. You've got more reason to do it for, because I don't know, it's a weird thing. Like when your kids are older, you want them to look back and think, oh, my dad's achieved this or whatever. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, it's ace being a dad. It's hard work, but like I say, I've got a really supportive missus, which helps because I can sort of go out on the weekends and she can babysit, say if I'm DJing or whatever.
Yeah.
And I can in it at any time, and she understands that how important it is to me and stuff. And same with the tunes, she'll let me sort of sit up in the studio for a few hours because she understands that it's important to me. So I'm lucky, really.
Yeah. So do you think having the kid gives you that extra bit of extra bit of get up and go sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So yeah, if you're listening to this, you're not got a kid yet. Have a kid, then you'll be flying. Yeah, I think for me, I think that well, someone said to me, I've obviously not got a kid, but once you have a kid, your shift goes from your inner to the kid. Like that's more important than yourself. Whereas before that, the most important thing on your day-to-day life is making sure you're just all right yourself, isn't it? Making sure that you eat yourself, you're not hungry, you drink enough water. But then as soon as you have a kid, then you've got something else to think about.
That's it. Yeah, but it's one of the best things you can do, definitely, man. It makes you. It's like that whole thing that you were talking about recently, of you realizing there's more outside of what we sort of do. There's more to life in the club, and that.
Yeah.
And it just amplifies that, really, I guess. You know, you're spending time, and I've sort of cleaned up my act a little bit since I've had a kid as well, which has helped as part of it, because I was going out every weekend, and that is the worst thing you can do for productivity.
Mate, I can't. I don't want to sound boring, but I've not done as we call a rollover in about 6 months. I went out on a bit of a mad one last weekend, but them 6 months have not. I've went out a couple of times and had a bit of like in the grand scheme of things, they're not big parties. You know what I mean? Like we've all done like the mad parties at the weekend, but the amount of stuff. I said to someone, right? So imagine you go out on a Friday night or Saturday night, and you're out till daft o'clock. And I'm talking daft o'clock. That you're going out, you into the next day and all this. So then you're losing out on pretty much a night's sleep. And then so you got Friday, then you're rough Saturday, you're rough Sunday, you're rough Monday, you're rough Tuesday still. You're still rough on Wednesday. You can't, if you go out like on a mad night out, it takes like 5-6 days to recover. I'm on about full recovery to the point of like your sleep pattern sorted again. You're not having them like, in the afternoon when you get like 1 p.m, you just like have a lull. You've got like brain fog. You can't think of anything new. You're only just like cruising through life. So if you're doing that, you're only actually getting maybe Thursday when you're on the ball if you're lucky. So that means every month, yeah, if you do that every weekend, you're getting 4 days a month when you're fresh. 4, because you only get Thursday, right? So if you don't go out for a full month, you get 28 days. 4 days is 28 days. Imagine how much stuff you can do. That was I did that for 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, if I've had a really heavy one, which it happens. It still does happen sometimes.
Yeah, always. I'm not trying to just say here that I don't do it, because I did it last weekend. I still enjoy it. I love it, but I think if you really want to get shit done,
you need to just sort of at least just reduce the amount of time that you're going out, because I'm not even asked about listening to tunes until like Wednesday. I can't even be bothered listening to house or techno, because I've usually hammered it over the weekend.
Yeah,
and it's just, and you just feel like shit. I can't.
It is funny, isn't it? Because I can't even bear to listen to it. I'm like it's just like a kick drum. Even when like Radio 1's got something on slightly, and I'm like, no, get that kick drum out my ears. But then it's amazing. I think when I played with Laidlaw the other week, because we got the party shut down and we took it to a field in the middle of nowhere, and it was just about 30-40 of us. And like I played records the first time, and it was the last time I played in a club was Egg on February the 8th. So I had not played to a crowd. I was in the live streams, which we'll actually talk about in a sec. But played, then I was like, shit, I love this. This is like why it kind of reminded me, because it's easy to forget, isn't it, when you don't go out for so long, for everyone, I guess everyone listening to this, I can't see anyone really who've gone to clubs aren't open in England yet. So no one's actually clubbed for such a long time. So it's funny, it's easiest for us to say about not going out so much, because there isn't really anywhere to go out apart from the pub. But yeah, when I played record to Reese we played for like 4 or 5 hours, it was amazing to actually do it again. And you're like, this is why we do it.
Because it's that connection that I'm missing. And I mean, we all went away to like a bit of a party house not so long back, and we took turntables, and we took there's a few DJs went, and that was wicked, because it felt like you're not just playing in your living room or in your studio or whatever. And for me, the best thing about DJing is watching people react to what you're playing, and sort of have a conversation with the room, and that's what it's about, isn't it?
Yeah, and back to the point of just the productivity and nights out. I think one big misconception is that you actually can have positive impact from going on a night out, though. I have been to raves and I felt rough, but I've still been like smiling on them. Like I remember how sick the night was, like you jokes to your mates and that, and then the good ones, and it can kind of bring life to the studio. So there is times when it can have like a positive effect. But there's also times when like you do it and you're like, fuck me, like I'm not going out ever again. I'm going to sell all my records on discogs tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? Never been that bad, but I mean, there's the kind of a fine line, isn't there, between you get that spark inspiration, like them kind of ones where you go to Mint Club and then like you're seeing Sonny Renee blast out till 7 a.m. and you're like, that was the one. Then you kind of try and make tunes that you heard that night. But there's also the ones where it's like you go to the pub and then you just shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah. And that's it. It's about moderation, isn't it? It's the same with anything. It's about just not overdoing it. I mean, there were times where I was absolutely smashing it. I mean, in my third year of uni, I think I probably went in like 3 or 4 times. It was that first year of being in Leeds, and
I think I was the same in Leeds. I think I went to uni like 4 times. Sorry, Mum, but I went more than 4. But I mean, that year at Leeds, I didn't want to do it anyway because obviously music had absorbed me. But yeah, I think that was just you just partying all the time. So it's impossible, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And next thing we just briefly mentioned live streams. Along with myself, we did a couple, and I enjoyed it a lot. I loved it. I felt like I was actually playing to people, but I think it was because I think we both waited about a month, didn't we, of lockdown, yeah. And I hadn't played any records really in a continuous for at least I hadn't played records for more than half an hour, one go for at least a month. So I did 3 hours in the end, that first one, but I actually did feel like there was a crowd there, even though there wasn't.
I'm surprised that I enjoyed it so much. But like you say, half an hour is probably what I'll give myself at home. I don't enjoy mixing particularly on my own at home. I don't know how you feel about it, but like
I don't. I've got my brother who, if I'm lucky, he'll play a few tunes with me, but he's like usually like, oh, I can't bother. But it's weird, isn't it? I think I could buy a fresh stack of records and I'd rather just listen to them on their own than stand there physically playing.
It's definitely a social thing, isn't it? I mean, if I've got a friend round, we're going back to back, I can stand there for 6 hours and have a few beers and easily, because it's about sharing tunes. When a mate comes round, it's ace.
Yeah.
But that's what I enjoyed about the streams, is a chance for me to just play records and did a lot of digging, obviously over lockdown. So to be able to play some of the newer stuff and get my head around it as well was ace. But
yeah, I think it's about sharing, isn't it? It's almost like top trump sometimes, your mates, isn't it? You're like, right, I've got this record, you've got that, and it's a friendly kind of like, oh, who's got the best tune? But it's not like in a fierce competition way. But I think when you're with someone else playing the tunes and they have an input, you almost want to talk about the tune as well, isn't it? Oh, listen to that, and then it's kind of adds to the excitement. It's more than just playing a record, then, isn't it? It's like you say, it's a social thing.
Yeah, definitely, and. I've got a couple of friends who are like way better collectors than I am. They've got just unbelievable collections, but yeah, it's a chance for you to just sort of share your tastes. And the worst thing is, though, if you think you've got an absolute banging record that you think only you've got, and then you just show it to your mate, and they're like, oh yeah, I've got that as well. It's like,
yeah. Oh yeah, that's the worst. I know. Yeah, I thought, yeah, when you've spent a lot of money, well, not even a lot of money, just one of them. So it's more got you when you think you've found like a £2 jam, and then like, oh, I've got this.
Even worse than that is when you've been hammering a record for ages and you think it's your like little gem, and then you've got someone like Pedro playing it and it shoots up to like 80, it gets repressed and everybody's got it. It's like,
I know that's happened a few times. But yeah, I think a lot of people have got sick records now, man. I think because the power of discogs and everyone's kind of learned to dig, including myself, in a way that like now it's kind of I've got a ton. It used to be like, I had a couple, 10 records which are lethal. Now it's like I've got tons of just lethal records that no one's got. But I think everyone can dig now, which is good. I think it means everyone's got much better tunes.
Yeah, definitely.
But also,
so much out.
Yeah, and it also means I think everyone's got to step the game with the production.
Yeah,
because everyone's doing it. Everyone's doing it. So what release have you got coming up then? We might as well tell everyone.
So I think a pretty similar schedule to yours, actually. Yeah. There's a Succumbit one coming up after your EP. So I'm not sure when that's out. Obviously, yours got a massive delay as well, didn't it? So, yeah. But I spoke to Ben Balance. He says the test presses are in for that now. So hopefully not too long. And then I'm meeting Bernski later. I've got a Constant Sound EP coming out after yours as well, I think.
Yeah. Chasing my tail. I've got a funny one for you, actually. I'm not going to say it now, but the recent VA you did, I'm doing I think I'm doing the one after that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but like you say, our direction and what we want to do with the music, I think, is sort of crossing over nicely, and that's why we need to get those tunes finished.
Yeah, we do.
Um,
We do
we-
definitely, man. We need some. They're cool, man. They're not far off. I think it's because your Ableton 10's not working, is it?
yeah, I've had a nightmare with it. It was working fine, but now I'm still on like the version. It's still 10, but the version before. But I'll look into that. So yeah, back to releases anyway. Succumbit, Constant Sound EP. There's a VA on Truly Madly's Mind Helmet label, which buzzing to come out. It's got Gene on Earth on it, and wicked track from a mate of mine called Joby as well. Who's making
Nice, that one.
And then yeah, just sort of I've got a remix coming out on Instinct as Oda 1-3 for James, and then just a couple of other bits and bobs really. But I'm sort of just sitting back a little bit because I'm going to let those releases breathe. I'm not sure whether I'll put much else out before the end of the year. And then
I'm in the same position, man. It's really unfortunate for both of us that we've got this really strong flurry of releases while there's no fucking gigs.
I know.
Like that's what I sat down the other day. I was like, right, I don't want to sign the Succumbit EP. I don't want to sign like all this, and I'm like, Constant Sound was a label that when I was working with Simone and Salvatore, my agents, like before I was working with Josh, we made like a bit of a plan, what I wanted to achieve and what labels, and I wrote a few of them down. And one of them was Constant Sound. So it was a bucket list label for like probably the same for you. I was like, right, that was a label I wanted to release on. It was just, I think it's a real timeless label, isn't it? I think Constant Sound will be a classic of our time. And it was, I envisioned it to obviously be an EP that would do the rounds. You'd see it playing everywhere, which you still hopefully can. But I think mine's going to be out in probably a month or two. But there's the chance there's not going to be many clubs open. And this kind of momentum that we're building would have been much better for us as artists if there was the gigs that can, because it all goes around in a loop, doesn't it? You get the releases, get the plays, then you get the gigs, and it's one big thing. Then more gigs can help you get bigger labels.
What's annoying is that these releases have come out in some cases during lockdown, and then like they've not had the chance to have a bit of club play, and when people buy the records, they're not as fresh, you know what I mean? So
I know.
And it's a bit frustrating, but I think with an EP like yours on Succumbit, for example, that's going to be hammered for 12 months. I think you're still going to be club playing that.
Yeah, I hope so, man. It's just an unfortunate. It's the thing is, I remember it's the same for everyone. Like it's annoying for us on the rise, but it's also just as annoying as Jamie Jones, who's missing out on ridiculous money every week. And it's shit for like the guys that want to go out and kind of educate themselves more. It's literally across the board, isn't it? So sometimes you kind of think, oh, you're the worst one in the situation, but it's literally shit for everyone.
It's struggling, isn't it? You know, but
I think it's a good time though for those maybe people listen to this that know what they're doing and just catch people up, you know, during this time. Use it as a real time to master your craft and come out of it with, because DJ is going to be looking for new music and stuff like that to release and to play out when clubs open again. So I think it's quite a good time for your budding producer, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. The amount of tunes that I made during lockdown, I was working from home, but you know, you can sort of knock off a bit earlier if you're going on. Do you know what I mean? So sit there, maybe have a beer and just make tunes most days, which was ace. I mean, I wrote the Constant Sound EP over lockdown, a couple of the tracks from the Succumbit EP. And then I've been making a shitload of electro as well, which is fun, just cranking the BPM up to 140 and just going absolutely mad with acid lines and stuff, which has been good fun. So I think there's another Alias in the works there at some point.
I think that's a good idea. And have you got any labels that you're still aspiring for the Kepler stuff, or is it? I think it's hard for me personally. I don't know. I'm not sure. What about your own label as well? Actually, let's talk a bit about your own label.
Yeah, it's. I think for me, that's where I'm going to sort of take my direction next, and I'm at a bit of a crossroads with it because obviously I put out a wicked release from Nolga, and that sold out, you know, pretty much straight away. But with my sound taking a different direction, I haven't yet made the decision whether I'm going to continue releasing music on Perspective with the stuff that I'm making now, or whether I'm like going to start a new label. So that's where I'm at. But yeah, I mean, what about you? Have you got some stuff coming up then? Or?
I think it's similar for me. I think I'm going to concentrate on you and me and just put anything out on. I've got some cool ones coming out. I think a lot of them are pre-sale. I've got the Constant Sound, the next You and Me one, which I sent you. Locus, the Infused label. But that was a while. Then I'm doing another cool one with Luca, which is like a collab EP, which is pretty sick. But yeah, I think after that, I want to do what exactly you said, clear the pathway, and just probably just do You and Me unless there's like a real offer which suits it. You know, I feel like if I make a track and I'm like, you know what, this will be wicked on that label. But if not, I think in the long term, it's best just to, if you can build your own label and build your own brand, it's ideal, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was speaking with Robert James, who runs Body Movement, and that's a label that sort of penciled in to work on next year, because
That's a cool one.
And it's, for me, that label, I've bought all of the records. I love the sound. I love, what Rob's playing and stuff. So that makes sense for me. What I don't want to do now is just release on a label because I've been asked, or just release for the sake of it. I want it to actually make sense in my progression. Do you know what I mean? And it sounds like you're exactly the same.
Yeah, it should be pretty interesting 12 months for us both, because I think the trajectory of the sound, the label, the direction is pretty similar. But yeah, I think one thing I would say though is, like with your label, I guess, even if your sound changes, most labels always change sound. But I guess because you've only done one release, maybe you could consider starting from scratch. But it's not always because the You and Me first release is much different to what we're on now. But I think it just shows the journey, I guess. But maybe with just one release, it doesn't really matter too much if you start from scratch, does it?
No, that's it. But yeah, it's something I'm gonna make a decision on, and sort of really, a label is certainly, whether it's perspective or whether it's something fresh, that's something that I'm going to focus on going into next year, I reckon. So you'll have to send me some tunes, 100%.
I know. So one question I asked the other guys is, what do you know now that you wish you knew then?
That's a good one.
Yeah, good question, man. Food for thought. I should always ask people before, but I think it's better off the cuff, because otherwise people just overcomplicate the question.
Do you know, one tip I would certainly give myself when I first started is not jumping into releases, or jumping with the first offer that you get to release a track on a label, because there are some releases that I actually regret early on. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, so same. I think I 1000% that I try and tell with the students and SYNTHO and stuff, I try and tell everyone, just be patient.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about waiting for the right opportunity. And, the first offer that I got to release on vinyl, I was like, yeah, 100%. And I don't regret that one, to be fair, because that did really well. But then I've done a lot of VAs over my sort of release schedule over the last few years. And I think they don't do as well as EPs. EPs have much more impact. I mean, there's certain labels that you would release a VA, like Mind Helmet, for example. And there are others as well. But if it's not going to move you forward, and it's not going to a label that you love, then probably best to just wait.
Yeah, I think I couldn't really put that in bold anymore. That I think if you have to ask someone about it, you kind of know it's not right. Maybe that's not right, because I've done that before, but I don't know. I think deep down, I think one thing is your sound's always evolving. So I could easily say I regret releasing some of my first releases, but without the first releases, I wouldn't be where I am now, because the journey would have been different. However, then you look at some people that have really waited, then come on the scene with big impact. It's done amazing. Gianna, for example, he's done great with that. There's a few artists, isn't there, that have not released much, but the things they've released have been really high quality.
And it's about, the quality of the music, rather than just slamming tunes out. Some labels are releasing like a couple of records, especially digital labels, like the amount of releases, and they don't have time to breathe. They don't have a long shelf life, and it's just kind of pointless, really. Well, I think it is anyway.
Yeah, I think, back to the point, the main point of just people being patient is so important. I think it's so easy just to, I remember when I first got offered by a label, and the label was crap. And I remember I told Mum, and then she was kind of buzzing, then I was buzzing. Then I look back and I'm like just because the word label is such a buzzword, do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I got music signed. I never even signed a piece of paper. I think the word signed is funny, isn't it? Like, I don't think you sign anything. I don't know why the word signed is used when really, because I think I've only ever signed one contract.
Yeah, I think that same here. And
it's a bit of an old term, isn't it, really, now? But yeah, I think that whole thing of just being patient, and then I wish, though, I think it's easy to say, isn't it, when you've done it, to kind of say like, oh, I wish I was a bit more picky with labels released on, but then when you really dig under it, each little bit contributes to where you are now. But in an ideal artist like vision, you would only release like the cream of the crop on the best labels. But yeah, I think those shit ones at the start, when I mean shit, I think we're meaning them like digital ones on some random Russian label that's got like 300 likes on SoundCloud. Do you know what I mean? They're not going to do anything for you, are they?
No, definitely not. And I mean, I try and avoid releasing on digital only because I don't think that it lasts. But there are some good digital labels out there that you can get involved with. And it's all down to the sound you're making and where you want to take it. But I think vinyl certainly will do more for your career than just releasing on digital.
Yeah, I think we'll turn up sound you're after though.
Yeah, definitely.
If you're making like more tech house stuff, I think it's daft not to be on digital. But I do think digital plays a huge part in like the artist development as well. I think having the balance of both, but I think without vinyl, it just doesn't feel as proper, does it?
Yeah, absolutely. But then, like you say, with digital, it can be a big part of it because Bandcamp is obviously a huge thing. I don't know, have you released much stuff on there before?
We've just done the you and me stuff, which is done all right actually. It's kind of just we're just leaving the money like in the PayPal and just stacking it up for a rainy day. Do you know what I mean? But it's quite a nice little. Some people must be making a fortune, like a serious killing. I think I'll happily. I guess people probably won't realize the split on Bandcamp, but the seller gets 80% of the record of the sale, right? Or is it more?
It's about that because they take a cut and then you've got the transaction fees as well. But yeah, you pick up about 80%.
So
I have to say it's been a really good earner for me because there's stuff that like unreleased stuff and like releases that I put out and I've listed them on there and you can make some good coin from it and it accesses a different audience because not everybody has turntables, not everybody buys records, and I'd rather people be buying it directly from me than going on something like SoulSeek and
yeah.
grabbing a whack. You know?
I think I really need to get on that because I've got a lot of unreleased tracks and it's just the only thing I think is if I'm not releasing it on vinyl, should I release it on there? If it's not good enough for that, that's the kind of predicament I keep getting caught in. I felt like if I'm not going to send it to a label and release it, should I release it on there? But I guess it's just been not too attached to the whole thing and just realizing that we've worked for that. We might as well make the money. We might as well reap the. You're pretty daft, aren't you? You wouldn't go and build a house and not sell it. You wouldn't just leave it there.
Exactly. And obviously, you and me both know you don't make a ton of money off releasing records. You know, it's the gigs that's the income.
Yeah, exactly. I think I will definitely look into that because you can just put a shitload up, can't you? And it doesn't cost anything to upload it.
Just like a pack for 10 quid or something like that. And obviously at the moment, Bandcamp are doing this sort of like Fridays where they're sort of waiving the fees on some dates, which is really cool.
Cool, mate. So I think we'll wrap it up there. You've got any other shout outs or anything like that?
No, mate, but it's been good chatting to you.
Yeah, man, I've really enjoyed that. I think we've got some good topics and I think it'll be quite insightful for everyone.
Yeah, hopefully, man. But we'll definitely have to get those tunes boxed off soon. And
yeah, man.
Hope actually see you in the flesh soon as well.
I know, yeah. Well, hopefully clubs will be open soon. I'm just trying to think, but can't think of a time when we'll cross paths, but hopefully it won't be too long, mate.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll enjoy your weekend anyway, bro, and I will catch you soon.
You too, mate. Nice one.
Okay, bro. See you in a bit, mate.
Bye.